Jordan Knox is a senior wide receiver and he's never had a breakout year. No 1,000-yard season, and a father who spent years struggling to accept the fact his son wasn't following in his footsteps. And if this year ends the same way the last 3 did, everyone who said he couldn't do this gets to say they were right. He was running out of time to become who he always believed he was, and the clock starts now. Jordan thought about returning to Miami, the only school that had actually shown him something real, but he couldn't help taking a peek at what else was out there. After all, he'd put together some pretty decent tape, so no harm in seeing who wanted to bite. And when he did, something jumped out at him that he wasn't expecting. Alright, stay with me here. UCLA had a young ascending quarterback, a gaping hole in their receiver room, and were coming off a 12-2 season and a second place finish in the Big Ten. A program on the rise with the pieces already in place and a spot waiting for someone to come in and take it. And the more Jordan thought about it, it wasn't a decision, it was his destination. But what Jordan didn't know was how this one decision was going to change the entire trajectory of his college career. From the moment he arrived in LA, the locker room parted like the Red Sea, and not in a good way. Guys were shooting him looks and avoiding him like the plague. The only person to actually introduce himself was sophomore quarterback Spencer Yusuf. So is this the usual welcome ritual for transfers? Ones like you? Yeah, but hey, don't worry, I'm not one to judge. What are you talking about? Aren't you a hardcore partier? Hell, I heard you even got suspended last year. Hey, but don't sweat it, just go ball out. That's all that matters anyway. Jordan had never truly considered what he looked like from the outside, but standing there in a locker room full of guys who'd already made up their minds about him, he got it. On the surface, I guess it was pretty easy to see him as, well, a diva. Senior year wasn't off to a hot start, but if there was one way to change the narrative, it started on the practice field. His ego was screaming that battling just to be wide receiver 3 was beneath him, but maybe after everything, that's exactly what he needed. A clean slate, a new depth chart to climb, and a new team to win over. Jordan was entering his final year at an 86 overall and with one mission in mind. Hit 1,200 yards receiving, secure a playoff berth, and maybe first team all Big Ten if everything went as planned. And in his first game with the Bruins, the team won, but Jordan never left the bench. In his second, a surprising loss, and Jordan still didn't see the field. Not exactly the start he'd scripted in his head, but he swallowed his pride, showed up in practice every single day, and did everything in his power to get right with his coaches and his teammates. And while the locker room still wasn't warming up to him, the coaches were starting to. He took full advantage of the opportunity, climbed the depth chart, and earned himself a starting spot, just in time for a matchup against the 5th-ranked Aggies. Not the easiest draw for your debut as a starter, but Jordan welcomed it. Early on, Texas A&M had his number. Their corners were sticky, breaking up anything he managed to get open on, and the competition felt like a genuine step up from anything he'd faced before. But when he needed it most, he found space up the seam and Spencer hit him in stride, and just like that, UCLA was in striking distance. He came right back up the seam, this time finding the end zone for his first touchdown of senior year. And not a single teammate came to celebrate with him. But he kept building anyway, gaining momentum with every grab. He took in another one for 6 and had yet another solo celebration. Okay, so the locker room thing was going to take longer than he thought. But the one relationship that was growing fast, the one with Spencer, was starting to feel like something real, a quarterback and a receiver who just understood each other, and that didn't come around often. And by the end of the afternoon, UCLA had squeezed out a 1-point win over a top 5 program. And if you had told freshman Jordan, the kid riding the bench at Nevada, wondering if he'd ever see the field, that he'd one day put up a stat line like this, he'd have thought you were messing with him. After the game, Jordan called his dad, not to brag, but to ask for advice on this whole locker room situation. How do you win over a team that's already decided who you are? He and Isaiah had spent the offseason back home together in Vegas, and things between them were almost back to normal. Almost. Isaiah would occasionally test the water, luring Jordan into the backyard to toss the ball around under the guise of father-son bonding, but underneath it all, he was finally learning to be happy for his son, to let go of the quarterback dream, even if just a little. And honestly, having a Super Bowl winning quarterback throwing to you in the offseason, well, practice doesn't get much better than that. Jordan had every tool he needed to make this the year, but when the Bruins traveled up to Seattle, something felt off from the jump. The chemistry he built with Spencer was out of sync. Routes weren't connecting, timing was off, and when the ball did find his hands, it didn't stay there. Jordan tried to force the issue, but the only thing he forced was an interception. That one was on him, he knew that, and so did everyone on the sideline. But Spencer was forcing things too. Another pick later, and this team looked nothing like the one that just upset a top 5 program a week ago. The side eyes in the huddle were loud, and this time, Jordan had definitely earned them. He desperately needed something to break his way. And late in the third quarter, he got it. He got behind the secondary, ran under a perfect deep ball, and brought UCLA down inside the red zone. Then on the very next play, in the back of the end zone, he got 2 feet down with a toe tap touchdown. A play like that even earned him a few fist bumps on the sideline. Against all odds, UCLA survived, notching another win and improving to 3-1. Jordan hadn't played his best football yet, not even close, but what coaches had seen across practices and these first few weeks told them enough. He was different from the guy who showed up on day one, and after battling through his toughest test to date, Jordan came out the other end as the new wide receiver 1 for the Bruins. The greatest individual accomplishment of his entire college career, and when he called his dad to tell him, Isaiah beamed with pride. But this new wide receiver 1 tag came with a target on his back, and it didn't take long for someone to take a shot. Ahead of their next matchup with Ohio State, Buckeyes cornerback Coy Beasley took to social media with a post that stopped Jordan mid-scroll. Jordan stared at the screen for a long time. He had heard versions of those words his entire career, from scouts, coaches, anonymous accounts at midnight, but hearing it now as a senior, as a wide receiver 1, from a corner who was about to be lined up across from him, that was different. And Jordan was ready to make him eat those words. Except the game went in a completely different direction. Jordan opened the day with a few strong catches, including one along the sideline where he physically ripped the ball away from the corner's hands. It was as good a start as you could hope for, and Jordan was feeling it. But it didn't last. Spencer forced one over the middle, gifting the defense a free interception. Then Jordan found separation against Beasley, but missed the linebacker sitting underneath. The ball was picked off and taken all the way back for 6. The fans weren't happy, and Beasley was chirping after every single rep. Jordan was officially tilted. But the worst part wasn't the turnovers. The worst part was that Jordan and Spencer couldn't find each other on anything. Routes and timing completely out of sync, like two people speaking entirely different languages on the field. After 4 long quarters, the Bruins had laid an egg, and Jordan had done the one thing he desperately needed not to do in his first game as wide receiver 1. He'd proved Beasley right. And after the game, Jordan caught Beasley on a live stream from the locker room, laughing, joking, rubbing salt in the wound.
Man, I told y'all that boy Jordan Knox nothing but a Nepo baby.
And Jordan couldn't help but sit there and take in every word. At 3-2, UCLA couldn't afford to drop another game, and for the first time in a long time, Jordan wasn't sure he could walk back out onto a football field and face the noise. His father called, tried to lift his spirits the way he always had, but for the first time, Isaiah's words just weren't sinking in. Jordan was too far down. He'd been in these low moments before, and he hated to admit it, but his response had almost always been some version of the same thing: escape, distraction, and self-destruction. There was word about a major party on campus that night, and for a moment, Jordan genuinely thought about going, drowning the whole thing in flip cup and beer pong, just like at Miami. But there was still a locker room full of guys who hadn't seen the real Jordan Knox yet, so he did something different. He called Spencer, and instead of partying, the two spent the night together running routes. Against Maryland the following week, Jordan and Spencer were back on the same page almost immediately. Jordan found the end zone, and even though his teammates still weren't exactly rolling out the welcome mat, he'd settle for grittying near the cheerleaders. The week after that, Indiana made him work for every single inch. Every route was a battle, every rep came with contact. He was getting battered and bruised on every play, but he never stopped getting back up. He grimaced through the pain, lined back up, and went again. And when he pulled one down in the corner of the end zone, heads on the sideline started to turn. Something was quietly shifting inside Jordan Knox, something tough and gritty, and for the first time, a few Bruins actually joined him in the end zone to celebrate. Things were starting to change in LA, but not all of it was good news. Spencer was struggling badly. UCLA barely survived their next game, and it took Jordan putting up over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns just to scrape them across the finish line. And it doesn't take a genius to see that one man carrying an entire offense isn't a winning formula. The locker room was coming around to Jordan, but it was slowly turning on Spencer. Jordan felt some of that frustration himself, but he also knew the truth. If this team was going to make the playoffs, Spencer needed to figure it out, because Jordan was absolutely not going to step back in to play quarterback again. So after squeezing past Nebraska, Jordan pulled his quarterback aside. "Look, you kept it real with me when I first got here, so I'm gonna return the favor. You're playing like but hey, look, we're still winning, so let's fix these problems and make sure it stays that way. Extra drills, film sessions, I can even get you connected with my dad, whatever you need." And Jordan meant every word of it. He started eating, sleeping, and breathing football alongside Spencer. Film sessions late into the night, extra reps before anyone else arrived, and true to his word, he got Isaiah on the phone. His Super Bowl winning father breaking down tape with a sophomore quarterback who desperately needed direction. 4 years in, and Isaiah Knox was finally showing up for his son's career, just not in the way anyone expected. Jordan kept being a reliable safety valve, and slowly, Spencer started to show signs of life. But the true measuring stick of how far this team had come would be against 7th-ranked USC. Jordan got things going with a 9-yard grab, and Spencer responded with an interception. Alright, not ideal, but no one said this was going to be easy. The Trojans jumped out to an early lead, and on the next drive, Jordan climbed the ladder and got pinballed by what felt like every defender in the secondary. USC shut down the drive, but Jordan came right back on the next one and caught a beautiful ball in the end zone, dunking on the goalpost. Bruins tie it up. Spencer was locking onto Jordan on almost every snap now, and it was working. Jordan took another one for 6 just before the half, then out of the break, he got behind the secondary, ran under a perfect throw, and outran the Trojans for a long score. What started out rough ended up in domination. 250 yards, 4 touchdowns, and one genuinely resurgent performance from Spencer later, UCLA put a top 10 program away. The Bruins closed out the regular season with a hard-fought win against Penn State, finishing 10-2, Jordan's best collegiate season by a country mile. It wasn't even close. But things were only just getting started. UCLA had punched their ticket to the Big Ten Championship, a rematch with Ohio State. And Coy Beasley, who had spent the entire season watching Jordan Knox put up numbers he said weren't possible, was already running his mouth again. The same tone, same energy, like the last 8 weeks hadn't happened at all. Stakes be damned, this one was personal. As the team hit the tunnel, Spencer pulled Jordan aside. "I just want to say thank you for everything this year. I know what this game means to you, and I'm ready to roll if you are." Jordan looked at him for a second, nodded, and patted him on the pads. The two of them hit the field together, and it was time. UCLA versus Ohio State. Knox versus Beasley. Round 2. The stadium was loud from the jump, and both teams felt it, the kind of energy that doesn't exist in the regular season. Jordan got open early, but Spencer couldn't find him. He took a deep snack on their next play, and their opening drive was snuffed out before it ever got going. Ohio State jumped out to a lead, and on UCLA's next possession, Jordan created a sliver of separation against Beasley, but got absolutely crushed by the safety as he tried to reel it in. Beasley stood over him and laughed. But Jordan got up, didn't respond, and lined back up. He worked the sideline on 3rd and long, coming through to move the chains, then came right back over the middle, splitting 2 defenders, falling across the goal line as he went down. Already, the Bruins had more points than their entire last meeting with Ohio State. UCLA kept feeding Jordan, but Beasley was everywhere, crashing down, taking away space, and disrupting everything. Then disaster. Jordan got tangled up with another receiver off the line, and Beasley read it perfectly, stealing the interception. He climbed to his feet, chirping to Jordan and the rest of the offense like he'd been doing all game long. Jordan just watched him. He kept his mouth shut and jogged to the sideline. The defense held, keeping Ohio State out of the end zone, and gave the offense another chance, but Jordan was struggling to create separation now. And if Jordan wasn't open, where was Spencer supposed to look to? Well, the answer was 70 yards downfield, dropped perfectly in the bucket, right over Beasley's head. And after flipping the field, Spencer found Jordan, who made a tough grab in the back of the end zone to give the Bruins the lead. The team went crazy, but the game wasn't slowing down. Ohio State ties it up with a score of their own, and now, even after that crazy drive, Spencer started forcing things. Jordan could see it. His quarterback was in his own head, and he knew exactly what that felt like. On the next snap, he streaked up the seam, threw his hand up, and Spencer launched it. A 50-50 ball, high and deep, with the defender all over him. Jordan and the corner went up together, and Jordan came down with it. And from there, he didn't stop running until he'd taken it 75 yards to the end zone. The sideline lost their minds, and the stadium shook. Then coming out of the break, Jordan kept ascending. He caught another one in stride down the sideline, taking it all the way for another Bruin touchdown and another sideline eruption. But no matter what they did, Ohio State always had an answer. Every score got matched, every momentum swing negated, the Buckeyes just would not go away. Jordan kept working, kept winning his matchups and stacking yards, but every time he looked up at the scoreboard, it was tied. That feeling, making play after play and getting nothing to show for it on the scoreboard, was excruciating. The old Jordan might have started forcing things, started trying to do too much, but this Jordan stayed patient and kept lining up. Now in the fourth quarter, tie ball game, Big Ten championship on the line, things were getting chippy. Ohio State shifted their coverage, and suddenly Jordan couldn't find space anywhere. UCLA's best weapon was hitting a wall. But on 3rd and long, Spencer progressed through his reads and found a receiver on the far side of the field who cut it up and took it 60 yards to the end zone. The Bruins were up 7, but Ohio State came right back and stole the lead away. 2 minutes left, down 7, Jordan was still seeing double coverage everywhere he lined up. But he understood something now that he wouldn't have understood a year ago. Being covered wasn't the same as being useless. He ran his route at full speed, threw Beasley off his coverage, giving his receiver and Spencer the opportunity to connect in the end zone for the game-tying score. The Big Ten championship was headed to overtime. Ohio State struck first, and Spencer responded immediately with a touchdown strike of his own. And then another one. Jordan wasn't the target on either of them, but he didn't care. He was thrilled for his quarterback, for his friend. Ohio State scored again, plus a 2-point conversion, snatching the lead right back. Then Jordan found an opening, reeled in his own 2-point conversion, and kept UCLA alive. Tied 57-57, this was definitely the game of the year. Ohio State lined up for the could-be championship winning play, but failed to convert, which meant one more play, one more 2-point conversion, and UCLA were Big Ten champions. Jordan lined up wide, with the stadium cheers growing louder with every second. Off the snap, he sold the inside release, then cut back hard toward the pylon. Spencer put it right on the money, and the Bruins had done it. Final score, 59-57. UCLA were Big Ten champions. The team stormed the field, teammates piling on top top of each other and coaches had tears in their eyes. Jordan stood in the middle of all of it and just took everything in. Then he scanned the stadium and saw Beasley already heading toward the tunnel with his head hanging down. When the box score came through, Jordan had 250 yards and 4 touchdowns, but he wasn't even the player of the game, not even close. Spencer Yusuf, the sophomore quarterback the nation had spent all season sleeping on, he just put together one of the greatest performances in college football history. Nearly 600 yards and 8 total touchdowns. Spencer had just carried UCLA to a Big Ten title. And Jordan Knox, the guy who had spent 4 years chasing validation, chasing his father's approval, felt something he wasn't entirely prepared for. He felt proud, not of himself, but of someone else. That was new. The aftermath of a game like that was a blur. Locker room celebrations, media appearances, and most importantly, preparation for the playoffs. But somewhere in the middle of all of it, something arrived that stopped Jordan cold. An invitation to the Heisman Trophy ceremony. He'd never once let himself think about the Heisman. It felt like the kind of thing that happened to other people, to 5-star recruits and generational talents, not to guys like him. But here he was, a finalist. With his father in attendance, Jordan stood on that stage surrounded by the best players in college football. He was already in awe just being there. But what came next shocked everyone. Jordan Knox was the Heisman Trophy winner. He heard the announcement, walked up to the podium, and held the trophy in his hands. And standing there under the lights, holding the most prestigious award in college football, all he could think about was Nevada. A freshman riding the bench, waiting and watching from the sideline, wondering if he'd ever actually see the field. He thought about Cincinnati, his father's words in his head before that first game. He thought about Miami, a girl named Chloe, and how his own ego led to a suspension. And he thought about UCLA, walking into a locker room where nobody would look at him. And now this, the Heisman Trophy with his name on it in his hands. But now, with the Big Ten title and college football's greatest award officially in the rear view, it was time to shift focus towards something Jordan Knox had never experienced before: the college football playoff. No playoff berths in 4 years, and now here he was. Against Pitt in the quarterfinal, Jordan came out looking like he understood exactly what this moment meant. Fresh off a Heisman, playing with a freedom he'd never quite felt before, he proved everything he needed to prove, and now he was just playing football. Well, almost everything. Pitt's defense was giving him hard coverage all afternoon, but late in the third quarter, Jordan shook free of coverage and caught a pass in stride and walked in for the score. A play that surely made the Heisman committee feel good about their decision. UCLA took care of business, and suddenly, just one game separated Jordan and a national championship appearance. And you'll never guess who their opponent is. Georgia? Yeah, see, I really wanted it to be Ohio State because, just imagine that storyline, but no, Georgia just absolutely dismantled the Buckeyes like it was a scrimmage, which honestly is even more terrifying. Seeing the Bulldogs crush a program like Ohio State made Jordan feel something he hadn't felt in a while: genuine unease. He was walking into the most dominant program in the country, in a game the entire nation would be watching, against a defense he'd never played before. And early on, Georgia confirmed every fear: suffocating coverage, physical at the line, taking away everything before it even developed. Jordan couldn't get anything going. It wasn't until late in the first quarter that he found his first opening: a deep ball threaded between two defenders, moving UCLA into striking distance, giving them just enough room to breathe. Spencer took over from there, carving up the secondary with elite precision, and even when Jordan came off the field, he'd still be able to lead the offense into the end zone all on his own. But Georgia was terrifying for a reason. They tied it immediately, then picked off a Bruin pass and cashed it in before Jordan could even blink. Down 7, Bulldog defenders were smothering him on every rep. Then Jordan did what Jordan does. He became a decoy. He ran his route, he pulled the entire Georgia defense toward him, and Spencer found an opening on the other side, moving the offense down to the goal line. From there, Jordan aided in an easy touchdown grab, and the game was tied once again. Jordan jogged to the sideline and felt something unfamiliar sitting in his chest, something almost like frustration, like he wasn't contributing enough. And what happened next had nothing to do with Jordan Knox. Spencer Yusuf, the sophomore who'd introduced himself when no one else would, started dealing. Deep bombs down the field, carving up the secondary even when Jordan wasn't on the field. Jordan watched the kid he'd helped build dismantle the best program in the country, and that feeling that had been sitting in his chest quietly turned into something else: pride. This was the kid that made Jordan want to come to UCLA in the first place, the kid that just beat Georgia. UCLA wins the semifinal, and now there was only one game left. One game after 4 long years, and it was over. Jordan sat with that feeling and felt all the nerves arrive all at once. The national championship game against Clemson, the undefeated #1 ranked program in the country, Goliath. Needing perspective, he called his dad. "I don't know, Dad. I feel like I haven't been able to get anything going these last few weeks. The playoffs are just different. Lately, Spencer's been the one carrying this team, and now this is the national championship we're talking about." Isaiah was quiet for a moment. "Son, special players always rise to the challenge when the challenge is toughest. Well, if he keeps playing like he has been, we definitely have a shot." "I wasn't talking about Spencer, son." Jordan didn't say anything and just let his dad's words sink in. And before long, it was here. Raymond James Stadium, national championship atmosphere. The entire Knox family packed into the stands together, ready to watch Jordan make history. Jordan sat in the locker room listening to the crowd build outside and felt the full weight of the moment pressing down on him. The pounding cheers, the battle waiting, and his father's voice still echoing in his head. Special players always rise to the challenge when the challenge is toughest. No more excuses. Time to rise to the challenge. Spencer wasted no time targeting Jordan, who reeled it in as two Tiger defenders crushed him from both sides. There wasn't a better way to start the drive, but Clemson made clear very quickly how steep this mountain was going to be. They started blanketing him on every route, contesting every ball, and taking away everything. UCLA stalled, and on 3rd and long, Jordan lined up wide. He raced for the sticks, two defenders closing on him as the ball arrived. He snatched it out of the air, left both of them on the turf, and dragged two more Tigers across the goal line. The sideline exploded. The Heisman winner had opened the national championship game with fireworks, but Clemson answered, then intercepted Spencer on the next drive, and suddenly UCLA was down 4. Jordan went back to work, dissecting coverage, finding soft spots, taking what they gave him, and pretty soon he was back in the end zone with yet another touchdown grab, putting UCLA back on top. But Clemson was inevitable, scoring before the half and then scored again right out of the break. Jordan already had over 100 yards and it felt like it meant nothing. He found a post across the middle, rolled off the safety, turned upfield, and outran the secondary to the end zone. Knox chants rained down from the UCLA section as Clemson fans watched in disbelief. But for every big play Jordan made, Clemson was always able to make one more. They picked off the 2-point conversion attempt and returned it 99 yards the other way. The Bruins sideline was exhausted, running on fumes and fading hope. Jordan paced the sideline, helmet in hand, talking to every teammate, urging a team that once despised him to fight and leave it all on the field. Watching him give everything he had, putting his body on the line, the team began rallying behind him. In the 4th quarter, tied at 33, UCLA got the ball back with 40 seconds on the clock. 40 seconds to make history. Jordan got the drive started with a tough grab over the middle, but the clock wasn't on their side. The offense scrambled back to the line and Jordan attacked the boundary. He barely got both feet down before getting crushed out of bounds. The clock stopped. He found more space, made another catch, and fought for every inch, trying to push himself across the goal line. He was finally brought down at the 1-yard line. Then UCLA burned their final timeout. In the huddle, coaches went through the options, and they landed on a play call that made Jordan's stomach drop the moment he heard it. Coaches were ready to keep the ball in the Heisman's hands, but not in the way Clemson was expecting. Jordan and the offense lined up, and off the snap, he worked toward the backfield, took the toss, and every defender on Clemson's side screamed reverse. But instead of tucking it, Jordan did something else. He pulled the ball back, planted his feet, and threw it to Spencer, who was racing for the end zone. The pass is complete, and Spencer falls across the goal line with the ball in his hands. UCLA wins the national championship. The stadium exploded, blue and gold confetti poured down from the sky, and players swarmed the field from every direction. And Jordan just stood there, stunned. After 4 long years, he just went for over 300 yards receiving and won the national championship with a touchdown pass. He looked around the stadium and then he saw him. Isaiah Knox was on the field, moving through the celebration and walking toward him. Isaiah stopped in front of his son, looked at him for a long moment, and then pulled him in. Neither of them said anything. They didn't have to. It was over. Jordan had done it. Jordan Knox came into college football as a quarterback who couldn't throw, and left it as a Heisman Trophy winning receiver who threw the winning touchdown in the national championship. And after spending 4 brutal years trying to prove he belonged, Jordan Knox just became someone who never had to prove it again. Thanks for watching.